We are walking a tightrope. Anything we do can have dire consequences. I don't think any of us on this stand today disputes the fact that there are grave risks associated with not raising the debt limit. But we all also acknowledge that if we simply raise it and don't do anything while we raise it, we don't do anything with any long-term binding implications, that too will present some dire consequences for our economy and for our future. And that's why we presented a plan. It's not just the best plan, it's the only plan. It's the only plan out there that has substantial public support for raising the debt limit. But it has significant conditions attached to it, most notably, most importantly, a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution, which, by the way, Americans overwhelmingly support. That's why we were so upset to hear the President earlier this week say that he's not willing even to consider that, notwithstanding the fact that Americans overwhelmingly support it, notwithstanding the fact that he himself has said we absolutely have to raise the debt limit, and there will be dire consequences if we don't. Now, if he believes that, that being true, that being something that he believes in firmly, one would think that he would be willing to consider it, at least, as an option for raising the debt limit. But no. Instead, he just goes out and decides to throw Social Security beneficiaries under the bus and say they're apparently the first ones we're going to cut. Why did he send out that letter? Why are Social Security beneficiaries the first people for the President to warn about the consequences of not raising the debt limit? Now, each month we bring in somewhere in the neighborhood of about $200 billion in revenue. We borrow something in the neighborhood of about $150 billion in a month. We pay out about $50 billion a month in Social Security benefits. So there are lots and lots of other federal programs we could look to. Let's suppose that if we were facing an imminent and unavoidable debt limit-induced shortfall of revenue, why would the $50 billion that's used every month to cover our Social Security benefits, why would that be the place to start cutting? Why would we ever start there? Unless, of course, the only intent were to scare senior citizens, scare retirees who have come to rely on this. I think that's cruel, and I think it's inexcusable. And I demand an apology and a retraction from our President.
Senator Paul,
you discussed the balanced budget as being crucial and support of the American public support this. Are you concerned at all about the tax trap? I mean, if we're talking about raising taxes now and we're required to balance the budget in 5 years, do we really think that any of the bold plans that Senator Toomey, Senator Paul are going to pass? Or are we going to have trillions of dollars in tax increases if we're required constitutionally to do that quickly?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Are you concerned that if the balanced budget amendment were to pass, it would lead to a multi-trillion-dollar tax increase?
No. Look, the balanced budget amendment is agnostic as to exactly how it balances. It's agnostic as to where cuts occur, and it doesn't foreclose or require any particular course of action. So ultimately, we have to come to grips, in any event, with the fact that we don't have a revenue problem nearly as much as we have a spending problem. One of the reasons why I think we can't expect to get our way out of this deficit problem through tax increases is that historically we've discovered that we'll collect an average of about 18.5% of GDP each year through our tax system. That remains true whether top marginal rates are where they are now in the mid to high 30% range or where they were 30 years ago, much higher than that. It has become known in certain circles as Hauser's Law, that there is a natural carrying capacity within our income tax system for generating an amount of revenue, and that amount hovers right around 18.5%. So if we raise taxes, what we're likely to do in the intermediate and long term is chill economic activity, hurt economic growth, and end up collecting less revenue in the long run. There might be some kind of a windfall in the short run, but in the long run it's going to be less than or equal to what we're collecting now. So spending cuts are the solution, and I don't think that there is a serious argument to be made right now that we can get our way out of this very long-term problem with the very short-term solution that a tax increase would be.